Hey everybody, Overdress is out! Wow, the game's good again for another 2 months! Look at me, I'm a Vanguard player. That means I've never experienced a healthy card game format in my life. Isn't Overdress so amazing? All I've ever known is V-Series, so this game looks amazing in comparison. I'm gonna be honest, I've lost all interest in Vanguard. But if I stopped talking about it, I would lose subscribers. So I devised a master plan to keep making content without spending a penny on this game. I decided to play Eugene, the card that nobody wants and everybody puts at the bottom of their tier list. Because if over 40% of Vanguard games are determined by overtriggers now, why would I ever have to build a good deck? And since all you glue eaters keep saying the better player will win anyways, why would I ever need to spend $40 on a playset of these grade 2s? I would like to proudly present the Eugene challenge. The rules are simple. From now until the end of time, you're only allowed to play Eugene until you win a tournament. Today, I will be taking you on my journey to complete the Eugene challenge, while also showing you how to build the best Overdress deck without spending any money.
I don't like Luigi's Mansion, it's scary! You know what's scarier? Playing Eugene in a tournament!
So I got the last one of these things. I got Dragon Empire. I decided to spend money, pretend I didn't do that. If I happen to see people at the next shop I'm going to that are just handing out the trial deck cards, I will let you know. I would also like to mention that they overcharged for these things. What I've failed to mention to this point is that our team has already ordered not only a case split, but also a case of the trial decks. But Plague, who placed down the order, decided to go to Florida for 2 weeks. Conveniently enough, the exact week that the set dropped. This usually wouldn't really matter since we could all just wait till he came back, but there's actually a shop qualifier on Sunday that I really want to play Eugene at. Under any other circumstance, I would not have gone through this much effort just to build Eugene this weekend. But this tournament is integral to the Eugene challenge, so feel free to subtract the extra money I spent on the trial deck. I sat around the shop today for about 6 hours just waiting for Vanguard players to come in. You get a Eugene? Yeah. Nice. And when they finally came in to crack some boxes, they gave me a Eugene out of pure spite, so we got 1 of 4 down. They actually wanted to keep all of the commons, and it really says something when they're willing to get rid of Eugene over every single common in the set. I also got some gold sleeves so I can flex the best deck in the game. Okay, Eugene update day 2. I got the ride deck and a shit ton of commons. Nobody wanted to give me crits. I understand why. It might actually be harder to get crits than it will be to get the rest of the deck. Because if you know anything about Vanguard, those crits are going to be playable until the end of the game. And we don't really have confirmation for trigger reprints just yet. I got one of these perfect guards. I ended up using some change in my car to trade for it. I also got some Tribash. He's decent. The Eugene deck is a deck at least, but I mean, I only have 1 Eugene. Hold on, I might go back in. What's this guy holding? What kind of box is that? He's opening a case. Oh, it's Bandai. Fuck that. It's playing Dragon Ball. It's cringe. With the second day of picking up commons off the ground complete, I had about half a Eugene deck. I was still missing the crits, the perfect guards, the overtrigger, the grade 2s, and the rest of my Eugenes. The deck was far from complete. Plus, I hadn't played a single game of Overdress. I was banking on my pure skill, intuition, and blau qualia to get me through this tournament. I figured it couldn't be too different from the Vanguard formats I was used to. Luckily, I'd been bugging the group chat of the store I was going to save all their extra commons, rares, and Eugenes. It was not looking bright for the Eugene challenge. If I couldn't find everything I needed, I was risking not winning a single game. Not that that's a foreign concept to Eugene. Nonetheless, I decided to take the 3-hour pilgrimage to the shop anyways. I got the rest of the cards. I had to spend money on it, but we can at least play Eugene today. The deck is finished. I ordered these things on the shop's computer over there, but I don't know if they'll come in time. I don't really care though. I might just cut one of these. Yeah, this is the deck we're playing today. Update before the tourney, I did end up getting the last 2 perfect guards and some draws for Novas. What you're watching here is not only round 1, but also my first ever game of Overdress. This was the prison deck, which if anything taught me that this deck does not use a single counterblast. Outside of like the grade 2 I play 2 copies of, and the order that I also only play 2 copies of. The unfortunate part about this matchup is that a lot of the time you're gonna have to snipe their prison cards and opt to keep their attackers on board. This is one of the matchups that you will almost never use Eugene's second skill, which is kind of a good thing because every time I use that skill, I almost always get perfect guards and triggers. Something else I found out about Eugene is that because they barely get any power mid to late game, you're almost always throwing your whole hand down to rush them early, so when they ride into their grade 2 and jail something from your hand, you kind of have less options. I feel like usually when that skill goes off, you decide to jail something that you just want to call back later, but if you're already calling your entire field the turn prior, it actually turns into a strict minus for the player that has to get something jailed. However, despite this being my first experience with Overdress and my first experience against Vanguard, I somehow won this match 2-0. Round 2, I was blessed with another prison matchup. This one was pretty much the same as the first round, except I did hit my over trigger pretty early game 1 at a kind of inconvenient time. This is also where I realized that freeing your units lets you activate their on-play skills again, so if you manage your resources well enough, you can pop 2 things instead of 1 with the grade 2. I ended up winning this match 2-0 as well. As long as I faced Vanguard players for the rest of the tournament, I could get first place confidently. Sadly, the rest of my matchups were not against a tier 5 deck. Now I know everybody's been gassing up Bastion all over the world. It has more representation in tournaments than any other deck, and I knew it was basically Melody with multi-attack, but I didn't know exactly how everything in it worked. I wasn't aware that they had a Pot of Greed grade 3, along with a grade 3 that gave them shield. I also didn't expect to lose the game turn 3. I knew the entire deck was grade 3s, so I decided to rush them. I got my opponent to 5 by turn 3, but then they just converted it into like 50 cards in their hand, and then swung for 60k lines 4 times. And while we did lose this one 2-0, the chat did bring up that my opponent forgot to discard for Bastion's skill. I don't think it would have made a difference, but it's something to point out. This round I played against Nirvana, which I was kind of familiar with because a lot of the cards are in the trial deck, but there's also a lot of card advantage and defense that isn't in it. I didn't expect my opponent to have a 12 card hand by turn 3 and a bunch of extra 15k shields, and after I realized that his only card that retired was Verena, I started calling my hand down early and rushing again, which seems to just be how to win most Overdress games, but it's specifically more important in some matchups than others. Like, yeah, he uses the counterblast to draw a ton of cards, but they're mostly either Trickstars, Verenas, or a bunch of orders, and him not starting on Trickstar meant that he was more likely to draw into Trickstars with arcs. After a while, I got the hang of the matchup, and I ended up winning 2-1. Unlike Bastion or Bruce, I had a chance to play the game this time, but as per usual for Vanguard, decks that don't multi-attack are pretty bad. So how did we do? Well, we got 3rd place, which is mostly explained by all the players in Top Cut having lost at least 1 match. Round 3 and 4, I got paired down and then up again, and ironically enough, I had the same record as the players that placed above me. While I could consider this completing the Eugene challenge, it's not actually 1st place, and I could try again in a week, but that's only a locals, and I'm not sure if I'm counting those for the Eugene challenge. Also, if you want to watch any of the matches yourself, I just made a new playlist where I post all the playtesting that our team does, plus our tournament matches if we have any, so you can find the full VOD to the event in there. Let's go over my mentality on building this deck and playing it in a tournament completely blind. This is Eugene's science class. Call it eugenic. Wait, no, don't call it that. So let's go over a little deck profile. We haven't done one of those in a while. The ride deck explains itself. All the starters are the same. We're playing the Eugene grade 1 and 2. Now, I understand a lot of people have been talking about playing Varina and the Overdress cards in Eugene. It's just not consistent enough to justify playing all the Varinas and the Overdress cards in there, when you could just be playing a better deck. And you're kinda missing out on some of the cards that synergize in this deck. Of course, our grade 3 is Eugene. It has to be. We're playing Eugene. We have our over trigger because we need it. We're playing our heals. We're playing our draws. We're playing the only crits in the game. We got 4 perfect guards. I was iffy on 4 considering how early on in the stage of this game we're in, but things are already hitting 60k, so I think we need 4 of them. We're playing 3 of this lady. She says when something dies, you can retire her and call a perfect guard from the top of your deck. It happened not only every time I used this skill, but also every time I used Eugene's. For of the 10k booster, this card's really good. It makes power columns early, and rushing is the name of the game in this format. 4 of this grade 1, same reason, it's a 10k attacker. If you're going second, you can call this unboosted and swing at your opponent. Pushing that damage and forcing hand early just helps you with those matchups that you normally couldn't win. 4 of this thing, because we kinda have to, it's the best grade 2 in generic Dragon Empire. It says if you're playing the game correctly, it gets 5k, and 5k is a pretty big number in this format. Just so we can up the number of beat sticks in the deck, we're running 1 more attacker. This is literally just here because it swings for 12. This grade 2, boosted by one of the perfect guards that you always unfortunately top deck off of your card skills, makes a magic 18k, which is also pretty good. Running 2 of this grade 2, it barely ever came up, but I think it is still pretty good. You can dupe its skill with prison cards. It's also early spot removal if your opponent happens to top deck a grade 3 in Bastion. Honestly, with the amount of counterblast we don't use in this deck, I'm debating putting the counterblast 2-1 in, just so I can have more options of what to retire. Grade 3s, we're playing the rest of our Eugenes. As aggro as this deck is, I still want a Persona ride, so I am running the other ones. Persona riding can just close out games, and you really need that win con in a deck that's mechanic is that it constantly loses. Speaking of cards that help you win the game, Tribash, I wouldn't run any more of this. I think 3 is a perfect number. I think he's good, and I'm pretty sure he's staying at 3. I played 2 Sunlight Punishment. I have mixed feelings on this card because sometimes when I drew it, I would just win, and others I would just lose. I feel like once we get the promos that can retire a bit easier, we're gonna cut this thing. So this is the deck as it is. I'm definitely gonna be changing it, but this is what I played in the tournament. I think the promos help this deck out a lot, and they make it so that you're not completely reliant on sacking to win games. Once we get the promos and the clan selection cards, I'll be updating this deck and posting another profile, so stay tuned for that. As for anyone that wants to participate in the Eugene challenge, if you're sub to the channel, are part of the Discord, and show me visible proof that you won a tournament with Eugene, let me know in any of the social media I have posted on the channel, and I'd be happy to send you a sticker as a congratulations prize.